speech title, the cab drive, I will never forget. Please, 8 to 10 minutes. Please welcome Emilio Mascatelli.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster, and guests. Good morning. The Cab Ride I'll Never Forget by Kent Nerber. Nerber was a poet born and raised in Minnesota. And he was, all his books, 16 of them, were very descriptive, transparent, and spiritual. There was a time in my life, 20 years ago, when I was driving a cab for a living. It was a cowboy's life, a gambler's life, a life for someone who wanted no boss, constant movement, and the thrill of a dice roll every time a new passenger got into the cab. What I didn't count on when I took the job was that it was also a ministry. Because I drove the night shift, my cab became a rolling confessional. Passengers would climb in, sit behind me in total anonymity, and tell me off their lives. We were like strangers on a train, the passengers and I hurling through the night, revealing intimacies we would never have dreamed of sharing during the brighter light of day. I encountered people whose life amazed me, ennobled me, made me laugh, and made me weep. And none of these lives touched me more than that of a woman I picked up late one night in August. I was responding to a call from a small brick poor place in a quiet part of town. I assumed I was being sent to pick up some partiers or someone who had just had a fight with their lover, or someone going off to an early shift on a factory in that industrial part of town. When I arrived at the address, the building was dark, except for a single light in a ground floor window. And under these circumstances, many drivers would just honk once or twice, wait a short minute, then drive away. Too many bad possibilities awaited a driver who went up to a darkened building at 2:30 in the morning. But I have been seeing too many people trapped in a life of poverty who depended on a cab as their only means of transportation. Unless the situation had a real whiff of danger, I always went to the door to find a passenger. It might, I reasoned, be someone who needs my assistance. Would I not want a driver to do the same if my mother or father had called for a cab? So I walked to the door and knocked. "Just a minute," answered a frail and elderly voice. I could hear the sound of something being dragged across the floor. After a long pause, the door opened. A small woman, somewhere in her 80s, 90s, stood before me. She was wearing a print dress and a pillbox hat with a veil pin on it, like you might see in a costume shop or a Goodwill store or in a 1940s movie. By her side is a small nylon suitcase. The sound had been her dragging it across the floor. The apartment looked as if no one had lived in it for years. All the furniture was covered with white sheets. There were no clocks on the walls, no knickknacks or utensils on the counters. In the corner, there was a cardboard box filled with photos and glassware. "Will you carry my bag out to the car?" she said. "I'd like to take a few moments alone. Then, if you can come back and help me, I am not very strong." I took the suitcase to the cab, then returned to assist the woman. She took my arm and walked slowly toward the curb. She kept thanking me for my kindness. "It's nothing," I told her. "I just try to treat my passengers the way I would want my mother treated." "Oh, you're such a good boy," she said. Her praise and appreciation were almost embarrassing. When we got in the cab, she gave me an address, then asked, "Could you drive through downtown?" "It's not the shortest way," I answered. "Oh, I don't mind," she said. "I am not in no hurry. I'm in my way to a hospice." I looked in the rear view mirror. Her eyes were glistening. "I don't have any family left," she continued. "The doctor says I should go there. He says I don't have very long." I quietly reached over and shut off the meter. "What route should we take?" I asked. For the next 2 hours we drove through the city. She showed me the building where she had once worked as an elevator operator. We drove through the neighborhood where she and her husband had lived when they had been first married. She had me pull up in front of a furniture warehouse that had once been a ballroom where she had gone dancing as a girl. Sometimes she would have me slow down in front of a particular building or a corner, stare into the darkness, and say nothing. As the first hint of sun was creasing on the horizon, she suddenly said, "I am tired. Let's go now." We drove in silence to the address she had given me. It was a low building, like a small convalescent home, with a driveway that passed under a portico. 2 orderlies came out to the cab as soon as we pulled up. Without waiting for me, they opened the door and began assisting the woman. They were solicitous and intent, watching her every move. They must have been expecting her. Perhaps she had phoned them right before we left. I opened the trunk and took a small suitcase up to the door. The woman was already in a wheelchair. "How much do I owe you?" she asked, reaching into her purse. "Nothing," I said. "You have to make a living," she responded. "There are other passengers," I responded. Almost without thinking, I bent and gave her a big hug. She held on to me tightly. "You gave an old woman a little moment of joy," she said. "Thank you." There was nothing more to say. I squeezed her hand once, then walked out into the dim morning light. Behind me, I could hear the door shut. It was the sound of the closing of a life. I did not pick up any more passengers that shift. I drove aimlessly, lost in thought. For the remainder of the day, I could hardly talk. What if that woman had gotten an angry driver, or one who was impatient to end his shift? What if I had refused to take the run, or had hung once, then driven away? What if I had been in a foul mood and had refused to engage the woman in a conversation? How many other moments like that had I missed or failed to grasp? We're so conditioned to think that our lives are involved around great moments, but great moments often catch us unawares. When that woman hugged me and said that I had brought her a moment of joy, it was possible to believe that I had been placed on earth for that sole purpose of providing her with that last ride. I do not think that I have ever done anything in my life that was any more important. The end. This is a very thought-provoking read that makes you consider what kind of experiences are we valuing the most during our regular days. Are we valuing only what happens to us, like an ego thing? Are we valuing only our families and nobody else? Or we value ourselves, our families, and humankind in general? What makes you vibrate? What makes you pause and reflect during the day? You can ask yourself that question. Because whatever the answer is, that is what drives you. Mr. Toastmaster.